Welcome to Call Me Didi. I'm your host Diva.
And I'm your host Sanchi, and let's get into today's episode. Today we have our lovely guest, Liz, who was flown all the way from Melbourne to Adelaide. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you on. Before we start the episode, I'm just going to talk a little bit about you. Always entrepreneurial, Liz was named one of the top 30 emerging female entrepreneurs in Africa by the time she turned 26. From there, she migrated to Australia, where she has helped 18 startups go from founded to funded by helping them with growth, community, partnerships, and marketing. Thank you so much for coming on once again.
Very excited to be here.
My first question to you, Liz, is that how are you, but in life?
I am really well.
Good.
I'm super happy to be able to travel as much as I do. So as Sanchi mentioned, I live in Melbourne and I get to travel to Adelaide all the time. I visit Sydney like every 3 to 6 weeks, often travel internationally. So it's really lovely to land in a place and already know people and be invited to do cool things like we're doing today. So I'm really well. In life generally, work is a really big priority for me, and I feel like that is going incredibly well. A big part of what I do is help connect the ecosystem in Australia and beyond, so that we can be the lifting tide or the rising tide that lifts all boats. And I'm feeling super fulfilled that is really coming to fruition.
That's really cool. So how do you go about it? How do you go about bringing ecosystem together and like bringing that to life?
So one of the ways in which I have managed to connect with people and therefore kind of like connect the ecosystem is building relationships. So the more relationships I've built, the more I've understood who is doing what in the startup ecosystem in Australia and beyond, what their goals are, what value they can add, and what they're looking to achieve. And through that, you then start being able to connect people with each other. And when you do that at scale, obviously that moves from I suppose partnerships to community, from community to the entire ecosystem. So that's one of the ways. So a practical example of this is understanding that a business might need exposure to the startup market, and then inviting them to attend a startup event, or inviting them to be the sponsors of that event so that they can get access to everyone at the event in a very soft and supportive way.
That's amazing. So so a lot of your work comes from a very authentic place of connecting people so that they can grow by having the right networks around them.
100%.
That's lovely. How do you monetize this practice as well?
So community-led growth is in fact a growth lever or a growth philosophy that many businesses can apply, especially, like I always recommend it, particularly when they are starting out. So what community-led growth means is you harness the momentum of the community, the feedback, the platform, the brand awareness, the ambassadors, etc., to then create basically a flywheel of value. So some of that value could be things like getting your first users on board. If you've got a community of people who are interested in the same, in solving the same problem, and you can help solve that problem, then you can leverage that community to give you feedback on the product, for example, or on the problem, to become your ambassadors. So they start recommending other people to use the product, etc. You can use them as case studies. And ultimately, they, especially those early adopters, they become your clients, but also your evangelists.
Oh, okay. So like with our podcast, for example, we started this last year, and we started as just like putting our just conversations out there from a very authentic place, because we're both immigrant women and we have gone through a lot since we have moved here and like built a life for ourselves. And because we are in our 20s as well, we face a lot of like life challenges which become 2-3x being an immigrant and a woman as well. So we just started to put our conversations out there, and it was from a very genuine place of just wanting to talk about things that nobody talks about, and so that other people also feel seen and feel like, oh, they're not in this journey alone. And then we realized, oh, we also need some more friends. So we decided to do like a Let's Make Friends events here, which we realized that was a massive gap, especially in Adelaide, because here it's like a very close-knit community. So for someone who comes from outside and they're trying to break into the community, it's really hard for them to enter and like actually make genuine friendships. So when we started doing those events, they started going really viral. Like people really wanted to come there. Like we had sold out events for like 3-4 consecutive ones. So now we realize that through the podcast, we have built this whole ecosystem where we put information out there for free on our podcast, on our Instagram, help people through like just feeling like they belong, but also through events which are like a first offering, you can say, where we actually, that's one of the ways we earn money. But then if we want to grow this and nurture the community and want to like really make a full business growth stage business, how would you say that we should go about it?
So I love the example that you just used, because even in your journey to date, you've really leveraged your understanding and intimacy with your community to actually determine what is needed and what to offer them that would be valuable to them, that would like surprise and delight them. And then they are invested in your journey with you over time. Some of the things I might think about as next steps is like, okay, you've got this engaged community and you're continuously growing that. So that's the baseline, right? But then from there, what you want to do is start thinking about what kind of offerings you can offer them that would be valuable enough that they are willing to pay. So either you want to look at like, how can you ask your community members to donate, or like pay what they want for tickets to your events, for example. Like you don't necessarily need to be like, this is a subscription model, now you pay to access our content. You could be like, hey, we're hosting an event, pay what you like for your ticket, or pay like, I don't know, a small nominal fee to access the events. Other things you could do though is look at partnerships. So who in the broader ecosystem would want to connect with your community? So, for example, you're in Adelaide, you're talking to migrants who are really looking at bettering themselves, who want to contribute to the economy, etc. Could you partner with someone like a university who wants to connect with your community to offer them short courses, etc., want to build awareness within your community, and get that university to actually sponsor some of your events, or to start paying for some of your content, or for access to a little ad at the bottom of your newsletter, etc. Those are so the one way is through partnerships, sponsorships from other organizations who want access to your community, because ultimately you're an aggregator to those partners. So what that means, being an aggregator, means that instead of, say, a university having to talk to 200 people individually and trying to access them individually without any trust, if the uni comes to you, they access your community, which is hundreds of people, and they also they gain the trust of your community because you're advocating for them. Yeah. So that partnerships angle is a really powerful one. The other one, as I mentioned, is getting the community to somehow contribute. We often see influencers, for example, do the monetization of their community through platforms like Patreon, where there's a freemium model where people get access to a certain level of content, and then there's a paid access if you want something more in depth, for example. Other ways is through ticketed events. Other ways is through subscriptions, etc. So those are some of the ways in which you can monetize a community. If you're a business, though, So let's say you have a startup and you have some kind of product that you already have in market that's starting to make a bit of money. You might not want to monetize your community in the way that I've just described. You might want to leverage your community so that it helps you make more money for your product, rather than having an income stream from the community itself. So earlier in the prep for this conversation, we were chatting about the marketplace that I'm a founding team member of. And there we built the seller side of the marketplace so that that is a community. So we started with 20 agencies in our community, and we started listening to what they might want and need, and building value and connecting them all, upskilling them all, and giving them a platform to connect and also to get value. And then we took that and we created our product around that, so that whoever, not so much that that the community itself pays for the product, but rather that whoever wants to work with us then pays for access to the community that sit on the product itself.
That's very interesting. Would you have any advice for people who are just starting a business? They have a product in mind. There's a lot of advice around there where you say you start, building a community before you even launch the product, right? You get people interested in your product, but you don't even have a product in the market. But it's just these people, they will be interested in your product once it launches. Do you have any advice on how people can go about doing that?
Totally. So I think Sanchi is a really great example of someone who did just that, right? You guys have had the podcast for a while. She's been posting about her journey for a while and building, I suppose, the community, the engagement, and the genuine, authentic care between her and the community, right? Then when she started, I suppose, building in public and sharing her journey about the journal that she published, or that she at that stage was planning to publish, I think the community was already bought in. And so by the time that she launched it, there was access and support from her community to purchase the actual product, right? So that's a really great example. One thing I would say, though, is if you're new to a country and you are still finding your feet, but also maybe finding your feet in your career or with the startup that you're building or that you're a part of, you may not need to actually build your own community. So what I often advise startups to do is to connect with existing communities. That gives you access to them as an aggregator. So they have access to hundreds of people or thousands of people already. And you can build trust in that space and try and partner with that community rather than necessarily the full-time job and the hard slog of building your own. What you also might want to do is access a bunch of different communities. So depending on kind of who your buyer is or what industry you're in, you might want to access different communities where different types of potential buyers exist. That way, so you almost build a community of communities. And through doing that naturally, your own kind of tribe will arise, but it will be more scalable because you'll have access to people who have already built those communities, and then access to the communities at large, rather than trying to build your own one from scratch if you don't have a lot of resources.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really good way to think about it, because if you're like a business and you are part of multiple communities, and then you go to those community events and you go to like talk to people in that community, you are also part of the community and you also have your own business and you talk to them about it, and then it's like you have access to all those people from different communities, which I think is very smart.
I've seen it. Now that you've said it, there's an example that's coming to mind. There's a company called Diaspora Co., which is America-based. I don't know if you've heard of it, but their product is they have spices from South Asian countries, which are from the farmers itself. So it's escaped all the middlemen, and they basically source the spices from the farmers and they sell it to people. And they're the best quality spices. Like the turmeric is like great turmeric. turmeric because it's fresh. Anyway, there was a new business called Mocha Chai Pot, I believe, where they've invented how to make chai within a pot, and that's authentic chai. And they were a startup. They went to this business and they said, hey, can we, work together, have our product on your website? They probably have a commission system with them. And this other business, Diaspora, was a huge community. And like now that you're saying it, it's blown my mind how easily I have gotten to know about this other business, which aligns with my interests. And if their product ever comes to Australia, I'm going to go buy it in the first go. So yeah, that's incredible.
That's such a great example. Another one that we've seen really recently here in the Australian market, that's more kind of scale up, is Notion. So Notion's just launched their offices and their presence in Australia. Notion is a platform that is used by many startups. And so what they did was they formed strategic partnerships with various communities. So a recent one that I saw was they formed a partnership with Aussie Founders Club, which is a community that I advise for. And Aussie Founders Club has multiple channels. Its Slack channel already has 500 founders. They have monthly events, often 80 people, 100 people in the room. And so it makes a lot of sense for a business like Notion to partner with something like Aussie Founders Club, where they immediately have the community itself vouch for their product and get exposure to their product. It's also an easy way for Notion to offer free onboarding or special offers or whatever, and Aussie Founders Club can then offer that to their community, and that's a great way basically to onboard and engage the Australian buyers of the Notion product. One thing that's interesting is Notion did that across at least 5 communities that I've seen, right? So instead of trying to sell to individual startups one at a time, they thought, okay, how can we be smart about scaling? And they basically sold their idea and their mission to offer value to, let's say, 5 community builders. And those community builders almost like unlock access to hundreds or thousands of people at any given time.
That is very interesting. So when, like, from a business perspective, but also from a community builder perspective, when you're going into these big meetings about strategic partnerships on how you can offer mutual value to community as well as the business, like you being one of the persons who would probably facilitate that because you're in the partnership space, how would you really go about these conversations? Like, how does that actually happen? Because it's like very new to us. We are still learning about it. We are still going about it. Sometimes it's really hard to be on the same page and like have at the end a partnership that actually is mutually beneficial rather than just one side being very heavy and the other side just trying to get by because they're in a little bit of vulnerable space, for example.
Totally. So the first thing that I would say is not to overthink it. Right. I think it can be very intimidating for anyone to approach another organization or another community and just pitch something. Right. So the number one thing I normally do is I keep it super casual. I try and learn as much as I can, maybe get into the world of the partner that I'm hoping to partner with, firstly. So I might do a lot of research and understand that a big part of their audience, for example, is South Asian women. And then I'd start thinking about, okay, what value can I offer this partner that would be valuable to them? So that I can approach the conversation from that place. So normally what I do is I reach out to people in a friendly fashion, just on LinkedIn or through my network, and say, hey, I run a community, for example, called the FOMO Killer Society, which is 250 founders across Australia. They have, a need for alternative capital sources. I think you would be perfect to come and connect with my community and tell them more and about what options are available to them, etc. And in exchange, I'd love to meet more of the founders that you work with, so that I can get them to join our community, for example. So that, like, thinking about the value that I can offer the other person is really important in the partnership, like leading with value. Sometimes you may not know what the other person's business objectives are. So in that instance, you just, again, ask if you can have some of their time. And then the first thing you ask when you do chat to them is, hey, like, what are you working towards? What's been really difficult for you right now? What does success look like? Oh, are you selling to a certain group of people? Oh, interesting, because I have so many of those people in my community. How can I help you maybe access those people? How can I get in front of your community, etc. Another thing that I found offers a lot of value is if I lead with giving them something. So recently I've been talking to the state government here in Adelaide, and I said to them, like, okay, what does success look like for you? So an example for them was they'd really love to empower as many founders as possible around how to access different types of funding, etc. So I said, oh, that's perfect. I know 5 of the key players in the funding space. I can chat to them and get them to fly over to Adelaide for an event. I'll organize the event, the speakers and the content of the event. Can you help me by giving me a venue? They said 100%. That's not a lot of cost to them. So I'm giving them a lot of free value in terms of organizing the right speakers, getting the speakers to the event, etc., coming up with a theme, and they're giving me value by sending the details out to all of their founders, giving me the space so that we have the actual venue. I don't have to pay for that, and that way everybody wins.
Yeah. So it's like a shared value. It's like a mutual understanding where you get access to their community, they get access to your community name comes out there, more founders get to know about you, they get access to the founders. It's like win-win for everyone.
Exactly. If I can just kind of like distill it down and give you an example of someone from the Philippines who is in his 20s, who has recently, I suppose, infiltrated a community in a similar fashion, that might be quite cool for some of your listeners. So there's a gentleman I know who has recently migrated to Australia from the Philippines and really wanted to get access to the startup space, and particularly wanted to sell his video editing and production skills to startups, but he didn't know where to start. So what he did was he offered one of the communities that I work with free video production and capturing their events. So he said, hey, I'll come in once a month, I'll capture the whole event, I'll do cool social media content for you. In exchange, please could you just do a little shout out on your LinkedIn posts with the content saying thanks so much to this person for creating the events. If you want to work with him, hit him up. And that's a great way for him then to access hundreds of people that he'd like to potentially work for in a way where he still adds a lot of value.
Yeah, that is a great example.
I love that. You've spoken a lot about FKS and the FOMO Killer Society.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what that is, what you're trying to build there? And something that Sanchi did mention to me because she attended one of your events recently was that they're really high value people who are part of your community. What has that journey been like? And it seems like you've been really intentional with the quality of people you want to bring into the community.
So firstly, I have to acknowledge that I've gotten incredibly lucky along this journey. It really has been the power of the community, the generosity of the community that has helped us grow. It's absolutely, like, community is not a one person thing by a long shot. But for a little bit of background, and I think it can be really cool to understand the process, because then also your audience can see that you don't necessarily start with the big end goal in mind. You might just start something small to see, how it's received, and then you build on it over time, right? And you get lucky over time. So the FOMO Killer Society, or FKS for short, is a WhatsApp group that connects founders, community builders, and ecosystem operators across Australia and New Zealand. We started as a small group of 20 of those people attending South by Southwest in Sydney together. So Alan Crabb, the co-founder of Birchall and also the founder of Possible and Front Cover, suggested to me that, hey Liz, let's create like a group of 20 odd people on WhatsApp that can help each other navigate a big event like South by Southwest. So the idea was, South by Southwest has different venues. It has 5 different talks on at any given time. There are so many after parties and special offers, and sometimes you have to stand in line for like 40 minutes at a time to get into one of the sessions, etc. So the idea was to connect this group of people so we can help each other get in those lines, attend those events, share interesting, learnings, etc. And also to connect, obviously, at the event. So that's how it started. We got really lucky in that some of our founding members were people like Desmond John and Dickie Currer and Claire Boo, and they were just incredible at, and there are many more, like I can list 20 at least. Maddie O'Brien, for example, Zach Zocker, they were all really incredible at, firstly, being open to the idea. Secondly, suggesting other people who they think would get value from it, attending our little coffee meetup, which we did at the start of the event, just so that everyone could get to know each other, and then really leaning in to the process and then the group, right? So at the end of that event, so it's a 4-day or 5-day event, by the end, we had grown the group accidentally and through the value of referrals from the inside to 70 people. So already we knew there was something special here. People were really excited. People were coming to the little side events that we offered, etc. At the same time, we realized that a big part of the people in the group were part of the Community Collective. And Paz, the founder of that, happened to be in the US at the time of South by Southwest. So we didn't get to spend as much time with her as we'd like, but she flew in towards the end of the event, and it was just such a wonderful synergy between myself and Alan and also Paz. And so by the end of the event, we realized, okay, there's something powerful here. The 3 of us can really build a powerful partnership. And so we asked Paz if she would love to get involved and, also open it up to her existing community, which is the Community Collective, which is hundreds of community builders, not just in Australia, but across the world. And she was super excited. She obviously really understands the value of community and is such a big champion for it. So off the back of that, we then started thinking, okay, we've got this group of people. We know there's value here. How can we offer them more value? And how can we connect them more formally? And so we built out a WhatsApp community. In other words, we took the WhatsApp group and we built a community of groups around it. So that's a functionality that you can use in WhatsApp. And basically what we did was we created a chapter for anyone who is in Sydney, anyone who is in Melbourne, anyone who is in New Zealand. So people can connect and share about their events that they're hosting. They can share content, they can ask for advice, etc. in those regions. We also have one for the whole of Australia. So if someone wants a broader network or access the audience, they can do that. But the main value of FKS has been the pop-up groups around the conferences themselves. So now with the big 6 conferences in Australia, so like West Tech Fest, South by Southwest, Sunrise, South Start, Something Tech, and there is one that
Blackbird,
I'm missing.
Sunrise.
With each of those conferences, we now partner with those conferences to bring a delegation of FOMO killers to the conference. we often, when we partner with those conferences, we negotiate and ask, hey, can you give us discounted tickets to the conference so we can offer that to FKSers? We try and connect people who are from out of town so they can get Airbnbs together, for example, or we have coffees and breakfasts and lunch and drinks around the conferences to connect the FOMO killers. So effectively, some of the feedback we get is that people fly in from places like Perth for an event in Adelaide, and they never feel alone for a second. They feel like they walk in and they can already be like, oh, there's a FOMO killer. Oh, there's a FOMO killer. And they can connect on that basis. And that then really offers them the human value of never feeling alone and of having access to information. But then also, obviously, through the chat itself, people keep each other up to date on what they're doing or what's happening on the different stages or who's sleeping where and flying from where, etc. So the value in FKS is twofold. The conferences at which people get like the full immersive experience, and then the always on groups, which are the regional groups like Melbourne, Sydney. The Adelaide one, which we launched earlier this week, is for local people basically to connect, or for someone from the outside who wants to add value to the local chapter. That's the place for it. May I add something else that's really interesting? So earlier we spoke about community-led growth, and FKS is a prime example of that, right? So the story I just told about, we went from 20 to 70. How we did that is our community members referred in other people like them who they believed would get value from the community. So that's what drove growth. We don't have a website for this community. You can't just go online and apply. It's all word of mouth. And to your point about the intentionality around it, we are absolutely not exclusive by a long shot, but we do want to curate the culture within the group and make sure that everyone gets as much value as possible. So we almost kind of like become the custodians of this wonderful space where people connect and add value and build partnerships, etc. So the mechanism through which we did that is we built out an Airtable application form. And in that form, it asks who referred you, and you've got to be referred by someone from the inside. And then I manually vet each one of those applications to make sure the person falls within the demographic. So, that it's not someone from corporate, for example, but someone who is in the startup ecosystem or interested in being a founder or a community builder. So we make sure that there's enough similarity that people will get value, but we also obviously welcome as much diversity as possible, because it's not just it's not just the same culture. We want culture add and culture build basically in the group and add richness and depth. Also, in terms of this community growth led model that I mentioned, what started happening for us very organically is that our community members approached us and they said, hey, we'd love to have a coffee before the conference. Can we pay for all of the attendees, for example? So they started partnering with us and saying, like, we'll sponsor it, please. So like a really good example is Zach Socker from Tech Visa. Was so wonderful. They offered to pay for a special sunrise yoga. So I think it was last year at South by Southwest, a group of us got together. And we had our personal yoga instructor on Bondi Beach. It was incredible, right? They were incredibly gracious and generous, and they paid for the yoga as well as for a wonderful breakfast afterwards. And my job, so they looked after that part of the partnership, and my job was to make sure that as many FOMO killers as possible come and attend the event and post about it on LinkedIn so that Tech Visa gets some brand exposure, and also just, celebrate the incredible members that we've got and that they're actually coming to us offering to help us curate experiences like that.
That is amazing. I feel like you have been very intentional in the type of people who join the community, especially because it started from already a conference where like all the startup founders usually come, and like they're mostly like independent contractors or like community builders who are already in this space. They're already high value people attending that conference. They've already bought the ticket and there to get value. And then you started a community there to bring them together and then double down on it. And I feel like having that as an aspect where you offer FOMO Killer Society in all the big conferences around Australia is like a huge part of building a high value community, I feel like.
So to build on that, I currently support over 1,000 founders through all of the communities that I advise and or look after myself. And one of the things I found with the building of community generally is that you need repeat exposure. Same thing with relationships, right? And I've seen this, I'm a migrant myself. I've seen how it's not good enough for me to go to one event and walk away. It's really important for me because I'll meet people, but I won't necessarily cement that relationship, right? It's really important to consistently or regularly get in front of the same people because it might take you 3 or 4 times before that you and the other person or you in that community actually click to the point where you're like, oh yeah, give me your number, or hey, I'm going to this other thing, would you like to come? So what made FKS so special was because of the in real life conferences that we go to, our community members got to connect and bond at South by Southwest, but then in March, I think, which is South Start here in Adelaide. So let's say South by Southwest happened in October and then South Start happens in March. So by the end of South by Southwest, people are already getting excited about having another experience like this at South Start, right? And that means that even if you only like quickly got to meet someone at South by Southwest and you've only kind of like been chatting through the group, by the time you get to South Start, you get to spend more time with them again and deepen that relationship. And you now have a little bit to talk to them about because you've seen what they've been posting in the group, etc. And then again at Sunrise, for example, or like so the repeat exposure gives people the opportunity to organically build relationships over time. Because just going to one event, you might meet one cool person, you might connect on LinkedIn, whatever, but that's probably as far as it's going to go. But if you go over time, you strengthen that relationship and you can be like, oh yeah, I saw you at the last event. How is your business going, etc. And then it becomes more genuine and connected, and you can actually invite them to something or offer them some kind of value. Hey, I've listened to this podcast and I know you're building a SaaS product. You should listen to this podcast. And like just that way kind of organically build relationships that have a bit more depth.
That's interesting. I have a question which I think is a bit more personal to me because I have recently been exposed to so many people because of the community we're building, and our community is building pretty quickly. It's been growing really quickly in the past year, but at some point you start to feel a bit exhausted because a lot of people suddenly have access to you and your energy, and you come from a genuine place of wanting to help them, but at some point you feel a bit like, whoa, like I need a break. Does that happen to you as someone who offers so much value to so many people, not just across Australia, across the world?
So it definitely happens. I consider myself an introvert, a social introvert. And so that in itself is challenging because when I'm on, in terms of a work setting, I'm really leading with, okay, how can I add value? How can I connect people? How can I bring the energy and leave the room brighter than I found it, right? But that takes a lot of energy from me. So I think people think I'm an extrovert, firstly. Secondly, to your point, when you are seen as the conduit for connection. So for example, at Sunrise this year, I met someone who runs a marketing agency, and he very quickly realized about FKS and all the other things that I do. And so in other words, I can really make a whole bunch of introductions for him, etc. So he reached out and said, hey Liz, please can you introduce me to certain types of people? Please can you have a coffee with me so we can strategize about which way I should take my business, etc. And I get those I get 4 or 5 of those a day. And I'm by no means the only one. Many of us have spoken about this. There is a wonderful startup and innovation advocate in Australia called Didi. He has a massive following and community. He together with Claire Bull runs Tech Advocates Australia. He also really cares about connecting Australia and the world. So he does a lot of work actually in Asia in particular, in terms of bringing the ecosystems together. And I know this happens to him just as often. Same thing with Megan Luttrell from Aussie Founders Club, Sean Greeley from Sell Anything, Paz, I'm sure. Everyone has this, we're all seen, I suppose, as hyper connectors or super connectors. So a lot of people reach out, to your point. I think amongst us, we've all started kind of exploring how do we still add value at scale without necessarily dedicating our own time to do that, because I simply don't have the time to meet with 5 founders a day. That's 25 a week, right? And still attend all the events, etc. So I've started thinking about other ways that I can offer value without it taking heaps of my time. So for example, now when someone reaches out and asks for a coffee, I ask them if they can share with me what it is what they'd love to connect on, because I might be able to drop them a quick note about it, rather than actually traveling to the coffee for half an hour, having an hour-long coffee, traveling back, for example. Or I ask if we can jump on a quick call. Or I say, hey, I'm not the right person to speak to. Maybe I don't have the bandwidth right now, but I think you should really connect with this person or this person. Or may I facilitate an introduction, to someone else in my network who I believe will be able to offer them value. That's one part of it. The other part of it that's really important for me personally is taking time out, which is really tricky when you run a community that's on your mobile phone, and also when those community members are your Aussie family, right? So someone like Didi, someone like Zach Zocker, all the people I've mentioned so far today are all people I consider family and close friends here in Australia. So there is like, I do a lot to manage my how I show up on with them, and also on my mobile phone, etc. So that I can take some time out and still be present within my community and also within the larger relationships that are so important to me. One thing I'll add though is, once your community has critical mass, it starts curating itself. Again, this is why I said earlier that myself, Alan, and Paz have been so incredibly lucky with FKS, because the people inside the group answer the questions of the other people inside the group, right? So I still work for a living other than run FOMO Killer Society, and the same thing with Alan and Paz. They both have their own incredible companies, and so sometimes you're in meetings when someone drops a message in there. I mean, there are 250 people. There are often questions in there that maybe at a time that's not that I'm not able to respond to quickly. And then what you start seeing is the community chimes in and people share their own experiences and advice and make connections and suggestions. And so it kind of takes the pressure off of you a little bit. You don't actually have to be accessible or available 24/7, because someone in your community is leaning in and showing up and contributing in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that makes sense, because when we have hosted like a few events up until now, and we realized by the end of the event, a lot of the times people form their own WhatsApp groups, and they're like, trying to meet other people through that, and they start making plans in that WhatsApp, and then sometimes they connect really well with someone and they form their own WhatsApp groups, and they form their own like little meetup events amongst themselves, which makes us feel so good, because it's like, that's so cool that we have been a facilitator of like bringing people together, but then they themselves form those smaller groups in there and try and make their own plans, and we don't really have to be there always.
Absolutely. I think that is so rewarding, right? Like as you've mentioned, Diva, a lot of what you do when you build community is kind of unseen and thankless. But the reward is in seeing the impact, in seeing, people are happy, people get value. So we at the end of a pop-up FKS group that is around a conference, we often get the most incredible messages from people who've attended. So they'll message and they'll say, thank you so much. If it wasn't for FKS, I wouldn't have come to this conference and I absolutely wouldn't have had such a great experience. I felt so connected. I've made so many new contacts who are friends, right? There's so much opportunity for collaboration. Thank you for hosting the group, right? And those kinds of things. That's the fuel, right, that keeps you continuing on the journey.
Yeah, 100%. I think this conversation has been so incredible. I do want to close the conversation today by asking you a question, which I'm quite keen to know. If there was one piece of advice that you could give to your younger self when you just moved from South Africa, which we actually haven't told our audience that you moved to Australia when you were 26, I believe, what advice would you give to that young Liz who was going to start this whole new chapter of her life of building something so incredible?
So I feel like I did a lot of the right things accidentally. So I kind of like my survival instinct kicked in when I arrived in a new place where I knew absolutely nothing or no one, and I started attending events and trying to make friends and connect. So that was my instinct was, okay, you've got to learn about the place, you've got to learn about the people, you've got to connect with as many communities and environments as possible. So I feel I did that kind of naturally. But the advice I would give to people is to lean in, or to it's what I did naturally, but it really worked for me, is leaning in, trying to say yes to as much as I possibly can, experiencing as much as I can, trying proactively to build relationships. So be okay with being a little bit vulnerable, understand that, I'm going to meet 200 people and 2 of them will become friends, but the others help shape my view of the world and the ecosystem, and they enrich my life. They may just not be long-term friends, and that's totally fine, right? The other advice I would probably give to me personally is to trust yourself. I knew what to do. I just didn't know that I knew, right? Looking back, I can see, I did so many things right, even when they seemed counterintuitive. But just trust that you know what to do. Trust that you have value to bring to other people, and that, they will receive you warmly, because my experience has been consistently that people receive other people who try and who are vulnerable and who lean in warmly, especially if you do it consistently.
And you do it from the right intention.
Exactly.
I agree. Thank you so much for coming on, Liz. It has been wonderful. It's always a wonderful time with you. You're an amazing human being. And we had a pleasure of having a conversation with you about community.
Yes, it's been so lovely. For everyone who's watching today, if they want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to do that?
Definitely, yes. So they can literally just look for Liz Van Zyl. So I know my surname is a bit tricky. So it's Liz, Liz, and then fun is VAN, and then the next word is ZYL. It's a bit of a tongue twister, but they'll find me.
Beautiful. Well, reach out to Liz. I'm sure she's here to either help herself or connect you with the right person who can help you. And please like, share, and subscribe to this video as well, and share it with a friend if you found it helpful, and they will find it helpful.
Lovely. See you in the next one. Bye.